Hey Phil, this is Cameron.
Hey, what's up, Cam?
Man, I gotta talk to you about something. Have you been watching the news?
Dude, what is going on? What's up, everybody? I'm Phil.
And I'm Cameron.
Two Navy vets, just here to talk politics.
We're here with some differing views, but we're here to have a civil and a healthy discussion.
Thanks for tuning in to Pocket Politics. Welcome back, everybody. Cameron, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you? And how was your trip?
Oh, it was fantastic. So I flew in on the red eye, so I got in early this morning and then took the Amtrak. Call me Amtrak Phill from now on. So I took the Amtrak up here, so it was a great train ride, and I love taking advantage of those things that are kind of an American staple, if you would call it that.
You must be running on fumes.
Yeah, I'm a little bit tired, but you know what? I'm super hyped up by all this crazy news. This was what the least expected, most exciting week in the news cycle I think we've had since we started doing this.
Plenty went on, so why don't we get started?
Okay, the elephant in the room, Trump. So Monday we find out that his house or his residence / resort at Mar-a-Lago in Florida was not raided, right? It wasn't raided like the Capitol was on January 6th. It was basically searched lawfully by the FBI, who had a warrant and did not plant anything. There's all kinds of crazy stuff circling around this, depending on what news sources you're looking at. But it turns out they find, 12 boxes of documents, including classified, some at the highest levels of classification.
So they've taken out over 20 boxes were actually collected from
just this time.
Yes, from just this time. So
I heard 12. I kept hearing that a lot, but
yeah, so the numbers have varied, but the latest I saw was over 20 boxes collected. Primarily, their search was centered around what they call the 45 room, or what Trump's offices, I guess, are there. Because Mar-a-Lago is a sprawling, I think it covers like 17 acres. It's a huge thing there. And the search didn't allow them to go in, or they didn't go into any of the guest quarters or anything like that. They kept the search around Trump's 45
well, I think we
45 room.
Did you read the warrant? I read the whole warrant, the three separate documents that, But that's what I'm saying. But when they got in there, their search was primarily around the 45 room, and then storage rooms, I guess, that are, however it's laid out. But I guess there's a bunch of storage rooms around there, and that's where they were kind of centering their search at. But the boxes were collected, and then there was 11 different sets or groupings of classified documents that they pulled out, as you mentioned earlier. And these different sets range from everything secret up to top secret SCI. Absolutely. And then the reporting follows up that there was nuclear weapons information in there, which I'll touch back on again here in a minute. But let's start kind of as we unwrap this story. So this was... Okay, so would we have known that this even happened if Trump himself had not leaked it? I'm sure we would have eventually found out, but don't you think it's odd that the president himself was the one who broke this news? It doesn't surprise me, but I still think it's odd.
There's a lot odd about this.
Yeah, I think somebody I was talking to said, well, he was trying to get ahead of the story, and I don't know if he was trying to get ahead of the story as much as he maybe just didn't understand that he's broadcasting the fact that he's under clear criminal investigation to the public, but... And there was a good possibility that nobody would have ever known, right? Garland's Justice Department has been fairly quiet and tight-lipped on the investigations that they are holding. There's a lot of people on both sides that are saying he's not doing a good job because there's no action. And that's just because they're keeping everything so close, and they're keeping their mouths shut about it, that nobody really knows what's being investigated. And had Trump not leaked this, we might have not found out.
So Merrick Garland has a tough job. All right, and I say that just because both sides of the political aisle have been upset at him for various reasons, right? One side feels he's not doing enough, and the other side feels he's going too far. He's kind of one of those people who comes into work every day just knowing 95% of the country is going to be upset at him.
Right? Yeah.
So, I mean, he's got a tough job. He did, though. So, one thing of note, Merrick Garland did take responsibility for this, right? Because there were some people that were, and I say responsibility, he came out and said, hey, I authorize this, right? Because there were some people saying, well, the FBI has gone rogue and they're just out doing things. And he came out on Thursday and said, no, this was my call, right? I mean, he did. He came out and said it was his call.
Christopher Wray, who, by the way, is also appointed by Trump.
He was appointed by Trump, yep.
Christopher Wray was ultimately in charge of this. However, Merrick Garland had to sign off on it because it's under Merrick Garland's investigation.
But what I'm saying is he came out and said, yes, I signed off on that. Please don't assume that people have just went rogue. I knew about this.
Yeah, now, did you know that the judge, the judge and the magistrate that approved this this warrant, this search warrant, was also a Trump appointee?
Yes, I'd heard that. I had heard that as well. So, definitely looking at the documents themselves, though, you talk about here's the hard part about them. We don't know a lot of real news about them just because they are classified.
Well, we shouldn't know a lot about it.
So, and just kind of for our listeners that don't or aren't experienced with classified documents, right? I mean, it's just that when things are classified, they're classified for a reason. Mm-hmm. They're not to be leaked out. And so that's why there is some shroud of secrecy and things that are kind of hanging over this, because we aren't supposed to know what all is in classified information. And again, there are varying levels of classified information. I know you know this, but I'm just kind of explaining this
I got
for our listeners. Again, it ranges from confidential all the way up to, as we said a minute ago, top secret SCI.
Well, I mean, my favorite joke in the military is that even unclassified is a form of classification. Therefore, unclassified is still classified.
Yeah.
But I will say, for those of us to keep it kind of simple, yep, there's some secret stuff in there. All right, the stuff that is marked, and you've probably heard about it in the news if you're paying attention, but they talk about this top secret SCI. This could range from all kinds of different bits of material. This could be nuclear weapons. This could be reactors. This could be phone tapping foreign dignitaries. I mean, this could be anything, right? It's so compartmentalized that it could be like...
It could be informants. It could be foreign informants.
It could be UFOs. It could be UFOs. We have no idea. But we do have some fairly decent reporting that there was in nuclear weapons material in there. And stuff about our nuclear weapons.
So there was some reporting about that. I also read that there was documents about pardoning Roger Stone that were found.
A whole bunch of SIGINT, too?
I don't have a lot of information on this one, but the documents about the French president.
Yeah, but again, it should be fairly well known that we wiretap foreign leaders, and not just our enemies. We probably do it to our allies as well. But that's the other thing. So the signal intelligence is kind of worrying, and again, for people who don't know what this is, signal intelligence is kind of a broad term that can refer to anything to picked up communications, whether that's through a wiretap or some other method of picking up cell phone communications. But it could also involve like radars and scanning devices. There's all kinds of different things that could involve. So who knows what all's in there? Yeah. And guess what? It's better if we don't find out exactly.
That's the whole purpose of classified information.
Yeah. Right? So it's better if we don't know, because we don't have the need to know.
So, and Merrick Garland said that. He stressed that some of this work from this investigation is going to happen outside the public eye, just because it is classified information, and so we're not a privy to, or we're not going to see some of this unfold in front of us just because of what's on there. Now, Trump himself said that he didn't oppose the release of the search warrant. Said on Truth Social that he was encouraging the release of all documents. Says his attorneys are fully cooperating, and in true Trump fashion, of course, he lashes out at the FBI for raiding his house, for raiding Mar-a-Lago, saying truth is on his side. So, Trump's obviously out there putting all kinds of stuff. He's got the Truth Social, I guess, social media site that he puts a lot of stuff on, because he's not on Twitter.
Well,
and
but
some of his other
the best
sites
part is that he says all this stuff, right? But at the end of the day, it came out Friday that one of his lawyers had delivered a signed deposition and statement to the Justice Department saying they had turned over all the documents that had been subpoenaed, back in February, I think?
I think it was February.
And so now one of his lawyers is going to be potentially caught, under perjury charges.
Potentially.
So I don't know what that looks like if your lawyer, is lying on the news and, making stuff up and then also perjures himself in a signed deposition sent to the Justice Department months ago. I mean,
I'm not a lawyer, so
I'm just saying it looks bad. I mean,
no, I know. I'm just saying I'm not a lawyer. I mean, while at times I wish I was, I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah, and then another. I heard something today too that another one of his lawyers may have been the same one. Basically removed their client attorney privilege on news because they told them that they had advised the former president to make a certain statement or to do a certain thing on Fox News, and therefore they just waived their attorney-client privilege.
It's worth noting, though, coming out of this, there are possible charges, right? And that's what people have been talking about. Three in particular that Trump could. Now, I want to stress the words "could" be charged with.
Well, they're listed in the warrant.
Yeah,
18 U.S. Code, Statute 793, I believe. And then 18 U.S. Code 2071 and 18 U.S. Code 1519, which are all articles that are basically dealing with the mishandling of classified information in various different...
Specifically, the charges are, to go with the numbers, concealment, mutilation, or removal of records, obstruction of justice, including the destruction, alteration, or falsification of records in federal investigations, and then the third one is that Espionage Act.
Yes, and some of them even hold... So did you read that there's up to 10-year penalty in prison per document in one of these? The
big one, actually, it's the obstruction of justice one, I believe, carries up to 20 years.
Yeah, but I'm saying one of those U.S. Code, and again, this is pretty difficult stuff to get through if you're not a lawyer,
right, and I'm not,
and we are not. Yeah, but there is a 10-year penalty per document for one of those, and so that means Trump could have multiple life sentences on his hands.
Well, I know that interestingly enough, a lot of people are gravitating towards the words the espionage one, but actually the obstruction of justice actually carries a longer. And they were saying this. I was listening to the news earlier. They were saying that one carries actually up to 20 years per charge. I think it's per charge, vice the Espionage Act, which is a little less. Nevertheless, though, those are the three primary charges that he could be charged with. He hasn't been charged with a crime yet or anything like that. But those are the three that they're facing.
Back to the timeline. We go from Trump saying, release all the documents. I want the Justice Department to release all this stuff, which they had already given him, in all fairness. And then Merrick Garland makes a press conference, says he's going to ask for the documents to be released. But I think that included certain redactions, right? They were going to redact which FBI officers were conducting the raid, other stuff like that, right? And what happens next? The former president just releases it, unredacted, all the information there. I mean, what do you think he's doing? What's his plan behind this? I mean, obviously now this is bad because it puts targets on certain FBI officials' heads, right? Because they're listed in the documents. But it's also Merrick Garland called his bluff and then he just gave in. It shows a lot of I'm just going to flip-flop and make these demands to showboat and to put this out there and then not really having any basis behind them.
So, you talked a minute ago kind of about the FBI and people looking at them and all that. Public reaction to this is worth some talk about too. 45% of the public, right, in a poll here, felt that this is a very big problem. Right, meaning the classified documents being down at Mar-a-Lago. So 45%. Another 17% felt it was somewhat of a problem. It is, though, and again, as they dive into these numbers, a very partisan kind of a split one. 76% of Democrats think it's a problem, a big problem, vice 12% of Republicans, and 44% of independents. So creeping up to about half of the independents think it's a big problem. 81% of registered Democrats feel the search was legitimate. Only 16% of registered Republicans feel the search was legitimate. I don't have any numbers on independents as to how they feel.
Yeah, but again,
probably about half on the independents.
A majority of the registered Republicans are feeling this is illegitimate because the people in the news channels that they watch, right? Because that's the first thing Fox News did was come out and say, oh, it's illegitimate. They were planning stuff. A whole bunch of politicians came out and said, defund the FBI. Marjorie Three Names started trying to sell merch on her website like immediately that said defund the FBI, showing that she just is willing to grift off the American public for a baseless claim.
Paul Gosar, actually out of Arizona, congressman out of Arizona, actually went and said he wants to completely dismantle the whole organization, which I don't know what we're going to put in place of that.
Yeah, I don't. This again goes back to the hypocrisy of the back the blue, but the largest blue entity in the country, the largest police force in the country, we don't want to back.
So problems you have, though, and I will say this, right? Political fallout comes from this, right? Democrats...
Yeah, look, I'll be honest with you. I've said, for a long time, I've said that I don't think it's good to be putting our political enemies in jail. Now, with this coming out this week, lock his ass up. Right? Cam, if you or I took classified material home and got caught, our lives would be upended.
Well, so and again, you and I have seen it because we've been around classified material and have kind of seen how it works. And I've actually seen people get in trouble for mishandling classified information. Mm-hmm. But I guess going back to that political fallout piece, right? The Democrats want action, right? And that's very obvious. A lot of Republicans are pushing back. For various reasons, right? You made mention of Marjorie Taylor Greene, Paul Gosar. Yeah. I think there's some other ones that have been out there.
It's the usuals. It's Lauren Boebert and
Now some Republicans, some of them came out of the House saying, "Hey, this may be an issue." I don't have all their names in front of me, but I did see some interviews this week where there are some of them saying, "Wait a minute, classified material could be an issue." Something that though I think is interesting is Larry Hogan, governor out of Maryland, very moderate Republican, and he was I saw an interview with him this morning, and he said, and he, by the way, has been a big Trump critic for very outspoken about it. But what Hogan said was this: for the sake of the country, let's everybody just take a deep breath and let the investigation play out. Both sides, right? Just let it play out. Let's see what's there. And Hogan's point, right, or what Hogan went on to say was, I hope, right, because they've gone in there, he's like, I hope there is a smoking gun in there, because if not, right, this could drive the country even further.
No, I hear you completely, but the end of the day is people aren't going to be satisfied with the answers they get because it is classified information, one. And two, right, because they're not going to get an answer because it's classified. Two, the other part of this is that, actually, I think I just forgot number two. But either way, people, one, aren't going to be satisfied. They're not going to believe it no matter what, somebody tells them. Oh, the number two was, you don't get this kind of a search warrant without having the smoking gun already.
Well, we'll see how that plays out.
You just don't. You don't get a search warrant for stuff but you have to be very, very precise to get judges to sign off on these, especially one of this scale where it's a former president at his residence, right? And then there's all the other stuff that's coming out. And let's keep in mind, all those people that are like mad that their dear leader, is in trouble and under investigation by the Justice Department and got his house raided by the FBI. Keep in mind, I could make a pretty good case that he may not have even been the president at all if it had not been for the FBI.
So, again, though,
because if you go back to the 2016, the build up to that, and you look at what James Comey did and the timing that he did it in, President Trump may never have been a president without the FBI.
Now you talk about some, and I'm going to say some, the GOP that are very much on the Trump bandwagon here, right? But that's not all. Larry Hogan is not on the Trump bandwagon.
No, I got you. And
that's what I'm saying. Like, Larry Hogan has a good point, though. Everybody just let the investigation play out before, right? Before people on either side get too emotional in this thing. And I think that's what he's trying to say, and I think that's a good message for all.
I agree with you. I also think that's a little bit of a political hedge.
Again, no, I think going back to this, right, I think it's important for people to be adults about this, and I say this, right, we had the guy in Cincinnati who was trying to take out FBI agents. I don't.
What do you think inspired that?
Well, and that's exactly what Hogan's saying. Like,
yeah.
Stop all the rhetoric and the grandstanding, and stop. Right, and that's what Hogan's trying to say.
The rhetoric and grandstanding is coming from one side. Let's be honest.
But not all of that side. And
I'm not saying it's all that side. I'm saying it's only coming from one of those sides.
Well, but on the same token, right? Emotions are running high on this, right? And so it doesn't help either when you've got certain members on the other side, right, on the far extreme on the other side, doing backflips and getting giddy and laughing and giggling and saying, "Ha ha, we got him." Again, I'm going to default back to...
Well, that's not quite the same.
I'm going to default back to what Hogan said.
Hold on. Being excited that we've got criminal action from a criminal, basically proven.
But they don't have it yet.
Hold on. They have it.
He hasn't been charged.
They have it, right?
He hasn't been charged.
The affidavit is out there, okay? But real quick, just being excited about something is a little bit different than spreading false information, saying, oh, the FBI was planning stuff in there. And keep in mind that the Trump, people, they did most of this spreading of the false information while leaking their own documents. It's like, at first they say there was nothing in there. Then they find out there is stuff in there. And then they say, well, there was stuff, but he declassified it all. And then when you find out he couldn't declassify it all, because that's not the way things work with classified information, right? They start playing this narrative.
So technically, they were talking about that this morning. Technically, the president can declassify things.
He can, but he can't just do it on a whim, right? He can't write it in a Sharpie on a yellow sticky.
The other thing is, one president can declassify, the next one can reclassify it again too. So there's a lot of intricacies.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that when he didn't like the fact that it was obvious that there was classified information in there, he just comes out and said, "Oh, well, I'd actually declassified it all." Which he hadn't done. Because there's a process for that, right?
There's a lot of processes to classified information. What I want to say, my opinion, I just want to see people cool the emotions on both sides and let it play out.
I'm celebrating. Yeah, well, I think this one's going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back.
So here's the thing, right? Trump is seeing a boost in popularity now. Right? And there are some Republicans that are saying, thank you. You just gave us the White House in 2024.
Yeah, well, I think we've got a long way to go before that.
Which I agree. I think there's a long way to go between now and 2024.
Let me ask you this. Let me shift gears a little bit and say, okay, why would he have classified documents related to nuclear weapons?
I don't know that he had them.
Okay, say he did. Say he did.
Okay, he did.
Why would he have those documents?
Who knows?
Let me ask you a better question. Is there any scenario in your mind that you could think of that's not nefarious of why he would have those documents?
Unless they were mistakenly taken. Well, I'm just saying. Okay. You're asking why would they be down there?
I'm saying, is there?
Him. I don't know.
Aside from a complete mistake, which is pretty hard to do with stuff that is labeled and marked the way classified documents get labeled and marked.
Here's the thing, right? Anything classified, I have no idea why you'd have it. Honestly.
Okay.
Besides, like you said, if you've got some hidden agenda behind
I'm asking you to take a step further. Is there any non-nefarious reason why he would take intelligence stuff down there, potentially wiretapped information, potentially nuclear weapons secrets?
Again, I'm just saying, if that is what is there, I have no idea why you would have it.
But if it is there, is there any reason?
That's why I said, I don't know why you would have it, unless you were up to no good with it. But we don't know what's down there.
I'm just going to say, the dude was hanging out with the Saudis the prior weekend at a golf tournament, right? And there has been some reporting that from like 2018 and 2017 that he was fully willing to share nuclear weapons secrets with the Saudis. The Saudis are paying his family members and people on his personal staff lots of money, right? I think Don Jr. or not was it Don Jr. or was it his son-in-law that got like $80 million from the Saudi government recently?
Here's the thing,
though. For what we don't know.
Here's the thing, right? Well, the United States as a whole is pretty tight with the Saudi government, but here's the thing: do you think anything happens from this?
Yes.
So, what do you think happens? I'm just asking. What do you think the fallout is from this?
I don't know that he's actually gonna spend time in jail, but I think he is gonna get serious in trouble. And another one of those consequences of the U.S. Code, one of those U.S. Code violations that was in the warrant, is that he could potentially be barred from running for any office.
So, I saw that.
And again, a lot of these are rules that he put in place as his, revenge against Hillary.
I saw that. I don't. Well, it's hard for me to say without again seeing it play out, right? And again, as we alluded to earlier,
we've got a long way to go with this.
So I hate to make a prediction today, but I mean, if it follows a track record of what we've been seeing, I don't know that anything comes of this.
I think this one's going to be a little bit different.
It could. And again, it's hard, though, for us to know without us being able to see what these documents are.
Well, we never are.
No, we never are. Now, there are, and here's something interesting. There are a number of Republicans that have said, hey, we are cleared on stuff. Can you show us in a briefing room, in a classified briefing room, what these documents are so that we can at least see what it is you're going after? Mm-hmm. And I think there's some validity to that. If you can actually go in, I think there are people on both sides of the aisle that would like to see it. And I think, honestly, there are some Republicans out there that would like to have a smoking gun on Trump. I'll be honest with you. I'll say it. I think Mitch McConnell's sitting in Kentucky right now, wherever he's at, probably saying, yeah, let me bury this guy with some kind of smoking gun.
Yeah, and we talked about this. I mean, obviously, he's been fairly quiet, and there's been plenty of other Republicans that have been extremely quiet about this, too, which doesn't look good.
Well, and that's why I'm saying I think there may be... I think there's a lot of appetite to see what these documents are, and some of the GOP politicians have just said that, hey, let us take a look at them, in the right setting. Now, I want to go back to your point earlier. Are you going to satisfy someone like a Paul Gosar or a Marjorie Taylor Greene? No, but to somebody,
Marjorie Taylor Greene's not on any committees anyway, so.
But you know where I'm going with that, right? But I think there are other ones that are interested in seeing some of this, and that's where I think we'll see in the coming weeks what this leads to. Again, it's hard right now. It's hard for people across the country to really get their hands around this because it is all kind of shrouded in secrecy. And there are some saying, "Oh, here you go. It's just more government cover-up, blah blah blah." But folks, at the end of the day, this is about classified information, and this is stuff that they can't just spew out there.
Okay, with that being said, this was not the only reason this was an epically bad week for the former president, right? So the civil suit in New York with Tish James, I mean, he had to go testify earlier this week in a sworn deposition in front of her, in which he pleaded the fifth over 400 times.
440 something.
Yeah, I think they said the only question that he answered was his name.
That's what I was going to say. I think it was just his name.
Now, are you aware? So this may be something that a lot of people aren't aware of, but the pleading the fifth in a criminal trial can't be used negatively against you by a jury. Pleading the fifth in a civil trial, which this case in New York with Tish James, this devaluing and upvaluing the value of his properties, his various properties that he owns, in order to secure higher loans while paying less taxes. This is a civil case, and in civil cases, pleading the fifth can look like an admission of guilt. And it can be seen as a jury and a judge that way. And there is a good possibility that Tish James is going to not even take this to a jury and just say to the judge, look, we don't even have to go take this to a civil trial, right? And I'll remind people that this is very similar to how O.J. Simpson was found innocent in a criminal case, yet found very guilty and liable in the civil case. Because when he got asked questions like, did you murder your ex-wife? He said, I plead the fifth in the civil case. And the jury was able to hold that against him and rule against him in that case. So
just kind of ironic that wasn't it 3, 4, 5 years ago that Trump said the only people that plead the fifth are like mobsters and guilty people or whatever that famous line is.
Absolutely. Now, so he said it multiple times.
Yeah, 440 some. I think.
And then on top of that, the same case. Did you see that the company that valued all his assets for these for like years running, Cushman and Wakefield, turned over the thousands of documents. It was like 30,000 pages of documents or something, or 35,000 pages worth of stuff, and basically just said, here you go, because they were paying a $10,000 per day fine for violating the judge's orders. So on top of that, real quick, he's also having a bad week because the criminal probe that is also occurring into New York for the Trump company and against his former CFO, they tried to get that turned off, and the judge came in and basically said, no, you're gonna go to trial, and your company is gonna be, held criminally liable.
There's a lot going on with Trump right now. I think we'll see how all this plays out in the coming weeks. Obviously, the big news, the Mar-a-Lago raid, and then everything else that's on top of it. There's a lot going on. I mean, certainly, bears discussion, which we've had some here, and I know we're going to have in some coming weeks. I want to shift gears here, though, into some other big news this week, and we talked about bad news for Trump. This is actually, some view it as good news for Biden, and that's the Inflation Reduction Act.
Well, I think the last news was good news for me, too. I mean, it was...
Well, so the Inflation Reduction Act the House passed it on Friday, $739 billion bill. It was passed 220 to 207 on Friday.
Which means...
Right down party lines.
Which means every single Republican voted against this.
Yeah, it has not had any Republican support at all in the House or the Senate at all. So straight party lines, both sides.
And keep in mind, the Senate actually voted on this since our last podcast. So it passed the Senate first. The vice president had to step in and cast the 51st vote.
Yep.
And then it went to the House and also passed. Which is very good news. I think they're expecting the president to sign it Monday or Tuesday.
I just saw this week he's on vacation in South Carolina right now. They said sometime this week they expect him to sign. I didn't see it.
Yeah, he'll have a pin with him on vacation, I'm sure.
So there's a lot. So there is, and so Democrats are celebrating this. There's a lot of Republican pushback here. A lot of Republicans are saying unnecessary spending. Is not going to address inflation.
But it lowers the deficit. It is going to address inflation.
So here you go. Many Republicans are citing a report from the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office that said the bill will have a negligible effect on inflation. And some economists say this is going to take years to ever influence inflation, right? And so I will say this. There are, and I saw this, right, some of the more moderate Republicans, I will use Lisa Murkowski, for example. She even said, there are some things in the bill I like, but I can't go along with the whole bill. So
but that's what compromise and getting shit done in our representative system is all about. Because guess what? There's things in there that I don't like. There's climate things in there that I don't like. I don't like the fact that they're opening up more oil leases, right? And fossil fuel leases. I don't like that. But in order to get a guy like Joe Manchin to the table, you have to make some concessions. Now, what I will say is on the environmental piece, they're saying this is 4/5 of what Build Back Better would have accomplished and our stated goal by 2030. So we are definitely moving in the right direction. And I think it comes at a very good time where we've had flooding over the past week in multiple states. We've got wildfires in multiple U.S. states, and this is coming at a time where we're like unleashing historic climate legislation, right, to help like slow the effects of climate change, while simultaneously millions of Americans are seeing the real-time live effects of climate change.
Okay, first of all, this stuff has to take effect. That's the big thing, right? I mean, yes, the president will sign it, but it's going to take a while for this stuff to come into effect. there are a lot of economists out there. Some have said great. Many others are saying, I don't know. It's going to take a while to see. I will tell you one sticking point right now with many is all the money to the IRS, right? That's labeled in here. Now the Republicans say that 87,000 new agents.
Yeah, but I think that 87,000 number was already kind of debunked.
Well, so hang on. I'm gonna get to that in a second. I'm just telling you what the Republican point right now is. All these new agents are going to dramatically hurt middle to lower class people, right? That's the fear.
Aren't the IRS agents middle class people that are working government jobs?
So that's the fear, though, right? I mean, okay, I got it. But as far as who they're going to audit, now
they're not going to spend their time auditing.
Hang on. Now, 71% of IRS audits right now happen to people making less than $100,000 a year. And so that is the fear, right? Now, IRS Commissioner Charles Rettig, who was appointed by Donald Trump, came out and said the audit rates will not rise for households making under $400,000. He said that himself a year, but will instead go towards enforcing taxes owed by large corporations and net worth taxpayers. So that's what the IRS is saying. And again, this commissioner, Mr. Rettig, was appointed by Trump. But I will tell you, that is a big sticking point with some is, well, wait a minute, now all these IRS agents floating around, are they going to come and dive in and audit us further?
Yeah, at the end of the day, I just don't think
do we need
middle class
87,000?
Well, that number was already debunked.
It sounds like a lot of money to the IRS, though, and I get it that now part of this bill is we're going to enforce tax codes, but does it take all these billions to enforce them? I mean, it sounds like a lot of money to the IRS. Does it not, Phil?
No, but it's a net gain. Because they're closing other tax loopholes. They're going to be able to actually enforce this. It has been shown over time that Republican administrations for the past 20 to 30 years have tried to whittle away at the IRS because they like their tax loopholes. They don't like paying these windfall tax gains. They don't like paying, their taxes on the interest gained, all this stuff. And now we're putting in motion something that is, one, going to create middle class jobs, right? Probably drive wages, which will help inflation.
Potentially.
And also, well, I mean, when you create jobs, you put more money into the economy.
If these jobs get created, if these companies, if this
no, the IRS jobs are going to get
created. Well, the IRS will, yeah.
Not 87,000 of them.
I'm talking about some of the other stuff with some of the other jobs they're talking about. Yeah, the IRS agent. I mean, we'll fund government jobs all day long, but I think it seems like a lot to the IRS. I will tell you this. I like to see stuff get done, but I don't like seeing stuff get done straight down party lines. I'm always a fan when you can get some bipartisan support. This one didn't have any. Now, I have said this before, private conversations. I've said it on the podcast. I am a fan of Joe Manchin. I think he tries to do a lot of good things. The senator from West Virginia, he's saying, hey, see this bill out. There's a lot in here that's good. I hope Senator Manchin's right? I hope there is goodness that comes from this bill. We've got to see it play out. And there are a lot of skeptics out there right now. So
I think that there's a fallacy in your idea, though, that you don't like seeing stuff done just down party lines. Because at the moment that we live in, there is very little that is going to be done that gets both sides. I mean, we can see the Republican voting record. You do get some.
You get some. I mean, the CHIPS Act. But we just had the CHIPS Act.
I agree.
PACT Act, right? I mean, there are some.
I agree. However, a lot of people are looking at this as the Republicans trying to pay something back by everybody uniting and voting against it. And at the end of the day, hey, you know what? At least the Democrats have an agenda.
So let me say this,
right? Whatever is in that bill is better for Americans than bitching, going on TV and bitching about Mr. Potato Head that doesn't have a gender.
All right, let me say this, okay? Before we dive into these social issues, I will say this, right? You can say the same thing back when the Republicans were all one side for the Trump tax cuts, and there was zero on the Democrats.
Because guess what?
I'm saying
the difference is that screwed over.
You didn't let me finish.
A majority of Americans.
You didn't let me finish. What I'm trying to say is, right? You can like one bill or dislike the other, but what I'm trying to say is that you could. I view that as the same thing, right? That time there was zero Democratic support. Republicans were on their own.
Because trickle-down economics was proven not to work 30 years ago.
Take that out. What I'm saying is I like to see people from both sides come in and agree. Does it have to be all of them? No. Are you going to get all 100 senators to agree on something? No.
Yeah,
but if you can get some to cross over, and we didn't have any...
I'm not going to disagree with you, but I don't think that takes away from the bill.
Well, let's see what comes of it. Because there's a lot promised in it. Let's see what comes of it. I hope there is good things. I'm not trying to sink the bill. I'm disappointed that there wasn't bipartisanship on it, meaning that maybe there could have been more compromise. I don't know. Manchin says it's a good one. I will tell you, Manchin's he is a very popular senator, right, nationwide, because most senators, right, have like people on their own side of the aisle love him, people on the other side hate him. I was actually reading a poll. That guy has a lot of Republicans that like him.
Well, the majority of his state is Republican.
Right, but nationwide, they actually had a poll on Manchin. He's like a pretty popular figure with independents, a lot of Democrats, a lot of Republicans. It's actually interesting to see a senator who actually garners, popularity from both sides. So what I'm saying, Phil, I hope it all comes out, but there's a lot of skepticism, and let's see how it plays out.
Yeah, I think now again, I think the majority of the country, the 65 to 70% ish or 73% of people in this country are really happy about this bill.
I disagree.
And I will tell you right now that I think you're seeing some of that in Biden's approval rating going up.
I disagree with that. I don't think it's anywhere near 70%.
And that's speculation.
I'm thinking it's lower. But you mentioned Biden's approval rating. It is going up. I will certainly give you that. He hit 40% this past week. And some of that is driven by what we just talked about, right? Passing the Inflation Reduction Act, or at least, getting it through the House. He'll, like you said, sign it this week. The CHIPS Act was recently signed by the president. The PACT Act. These are all things that are coming through.
And if people need a reason to vote blue going into the fall this year, they just have to look at the party that's getting things done.
Well, okay.
And you know what? They're the party that's getting things done against all odds. Because guess what?
It's not all odds. They have the Senate and the House.
What? But they have
the White House.
They have the Senate by 50-50. Okay?
Well, 51 with the vice president.
With the vice president, but what I'm saying is
they got the House.
That all of Trump's wins were in larger Republican and owned Senate and House.
So they've got the Senate, they've got the House, they've got the White House. Are they doing some things? Yes, but let's remember the CHIPS Act, the PACT Act, the infrastructure bills. That stuff has all had Republican support. So now that can be, honestly, I like that because that shows some bipartisanship, right? Working together on some of that. Nevertheless, though, these are things, right, especially the Inflation Reduction Act, that look like they're giving the president a boost. Now, he's still underwater, though. He is still underwater on his approval ratings. Kyle Kondik, from the managing editor of Sabato's Crystal Ball at the University of Virginia Center for Politics, called his approval as still weak overall compared to Trump's 42% approval rating 4 years ago. There's a Reuters poll out that shows 78% of Democrats approve of Biden, up from 69% a month earlier. So, he just jumped up, almost 10 points this month.
Yeah, and again, we can look at the poll numbers. We'll say they are what they are, but I will say that stuff is happening. The bottom line is things are happening.
Yeah, no, they are. So they are, right? And so he is seeing an uptick in his approval. Again, probably not where he wants it, but he's seeing an uptick in approval. I want to put a plug in quick for our social media before we jump on too much further into any other news real quick.
Well, the biggest thing is I think we can officially announce it is going to continue to be updated, but we can officially announce pocketpolitics.co. So pocketpolitics.co, you can go there. You can get the latest episode up there, a link to the Spotify where you can subscribe. We've even, got some information about us, how to get in touch with us, our email there, so we don't have to spell it out literally every single podcast episode. So we'll let you go to the website instead of spelling out Cameron and Phill at gmail.com. Go visit pocketpolitics.co.
Yeah, take a look at it. There you go. So continue to hit us up, send us feedback, all that good stuff. We're out there on social media. Keep giving us likes and continue to support us, and most importantly, listen. So we appreciate all of you. There were some big primaries this week, Phill.
Okay, before you get into primaries, though, I wanna go back to last week's episode. We closed with a bit about Alex Jones, and I just briefly want to talk about.
Yeah, no, jump in there real quick.
So what looked really bad last Wednesday when we recorded has gotten very much worse in the following days. So I talked about in the last episode his Alex Jones' lawyer in this fairly small civil case. It was like $5 or $4 million or something like that.
I think it was $4.5 million.
Yeah, his lawyer though sent over basically 3 years worth of his entire cell phone records to the attorney that was going against him, right? And then that was subsequently immediately subpoenaed and turned over to the January 6th committee because he was there on January 6th and the days leading up to it, giving speeches, probably communicating with people in Trump's ring, right? And then on top of that, it was followed up by another case that he lost that was worth something, what was it, $45 million or something like that?
I think it's like 44 or 45 million, yeah.
And there's more coming, it looks like, too. And then he found out that because all those records were released of his texts and emails and various other communications, that now he's probably going to get perjury charges because he lied under oath. Yeah. So, more bad news for Alex Jones. I won't keep beating that drum. I just think it's funny, and since we talked about it in closing remarks last week, we can revisit and say, hey, there was more news, and it did not look good. As a matter of fact, it got much worse.
I think we'll see plenty more from him in the coming weeks in the news.
Absolutely.
I want to get into the primaries here. Before I do get too far in that, I just want to say there was some sad news here recently. Representative from Indiana, Jackie Walorski, she died along with 2 staffers in a car crash on August 3rd. She served in the House for almost 10 years, was a ranking member of the House Ethics Committee. This past week, Phill, the House honored her with a moment of silence on Friday. She was remembered fondly by people from both sides of the aisle. And Ms. Walorski was 58 when she passed. So some sad news. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Pretty sad. So, it'll be interesting to see if, do you think they try and get somebody in that seat before November? Or do you think they just wait to see how November rolls out? I mean,
I would almost think this close to it, they'll I would think wait till November because we're pretty darn close.
Yeah,
we're 90-ish days away.
We almost need to go back and look and see where Indiana primaries are because it's something we haven't really talked about. I mean,
let me take that for some homework.
Yeah,
bring that to the next episode because that is interesting. Yeah,
but speaking of also replacing, we actually gained a new congressman this week too.
Yeah. I was going to talk about that down the road here in the Minnesota one, but Brad Finstead is going to replace Jim Hagedorn as a representative.
Not going to replace. Replaced. He was sworn in on Monday.
Yeah, he replaced. So he's going to replace, and that came from Hagedorn passing away. So that seat was left open in Minnesota there. I'm going to touch some more on Minnesota here in a minute.
Why don't we go straight to it, and then we'll hit Wisconsin on the back end since we're already at Minnesota.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I can do Minnesota here quick. They did have a primary this past week. It was in the news. The big news that came out of there really was Ilhan Omar. She represents the Minneapolis area, roughly, right? Her district that she represents is roughly the Minneapolis area.
And she's part of the infamous squad.
She is. Very progressive woman there. She squared off, though, against a centrist candidate. Now, let me just say this, right? The Democrat, whoever wins up there in these primaries that has the D next to her name in this part of Minnesota is likely going to win, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, they're probably will see little competition, I should say, from Republicans. Sure, they'll try it, but at the end of the day, whoever has that D next to their name is probably going to win. But it's interesting that Omar saw a challenger this time, and not just a challenger, but someone who actually brought a real fight.
It was projected to be closer than it actually was, but it was still close.
It was very close. I mean, originally people thought there was no chance for this person named Don Samuels, right? And weeks ago, no one even had heard of this person, really. He very much a centrist, and he was running on that. And he said, hey, Ilhan Omar has repeatedly said she wants to defund the police. I do not. I was tired of seeing our neighborhoods burn up here in Minnesota. He said she was very divisive. This is his words. He said she's very divisive and out of touch on crime. and said she is beatable. And so, and he's, saying, I can do this, right? And
but he couldn't.
Well, he couldn't, but he's closer than anyone thought, and that's why this is worth a mention. So when they were done counting, the last figure I saw, 50.3% went to Omar and 48.2% went to Samuels. It's a pretty close race.
True, but it was projected to be even closer.
Yeah, but still a difference of less than 2,500 votes. And here's the thing going forward, I think, in Minnesota for this one, right? I think down the road, Democrats, I think, in that Twin Cities area, that Minneapolis district of Omar's, I think they're going to be energized, and I think she is going to see a hard challenger 2 years from now again. Now, whether it's Samuels or someone else, but I think you're going to see the centrist movement push up there in the Twin Cities area.
That wouldn't surprise me. And we talked about, I briefly mentioned the squad. I think all of the rest of them pretty much have also won.
I think so
at this point, or at least won their primaries. And are going to get a shot as an incumbent. However, I will say that is not necessarily the ideal political group to be a part of. I mean, that's like the equivalent of being the group of Gosar and Green and Boebert.
You go one extreme.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the ideal place to be as a politician, and even for me as a fairly progressive Democrat kind of minded person, it's a little bit rough, and it's not so much like, honestly, I haven't heard her say that much. I've heard her say some things that were pretty controversial. I've heard her say other things that I was right on board with, but at the end of the day, what I don't want is Boebert out there telling audiences that she made terrorist jokes when she was in an elevator with Ilhan Omar. It just doesn't. Well, it's not the kind of optics that we want.
And so again, though, going forward, Phil, it looks like up in Minnesota, there's certainly some interest in running against her, and it looks like there's a recipe now for possibly beating her. So again, 2 years from now, it'll be interesting to see how if she does get primaried out. Now, the fact that she has won her primary, she will likely go on to win, like I said, a very blue district that she represents. So I think now, she's fairly safe moving forward. I want to shift gears, though, Phil. Before I shift gears, I guess we already did mention the Finstead's going to replace the Hagedorn up there, or it has replaced, as you said, Phil. I want to touch on Wisconsin here, taking a look at that. So Wisconsin had their primary this week. They had the highest turnout they've had in 40 years for a primary. So kind of interesting. They had 25.8% of voters, registered voters, turn out. This week it saw Rebecca Kleefisch. She was the establishment favorite. She was defeated by a Trump-backed businessman, Tim Michels, in the GOP governor primary race. So Michels will go on to face the incumbent Democratic governor, Tony Evers. So any thoughts on that one, Phil?
Well, I think it should be known that that Tim Michels also, within like the last 2 weeks gave a speech and said, I really want to be tough on crime and all this stuff. And then earlier this week was out there crying because the FBI raided former President Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate. So I don't quite know where he stands on the policing issue, but it should also be known too that this guy has an axe to grind, because his company was actually the company that was supposed to be building the Keystone XL extension, which President Biden, canceled.
So last time I checked, Evers had he was above water, if you will, in his popularity rating in the state. I haven't seen a primary yet, or a poll since the primary yet on where he stands. I think the governor race will be pretty tight, though, up there in Wisconsin. Also of note this week, so the Democrats now have a challenger, Phil, to take on Ron Johnson for the Senate seat. So Mandela Barnes is gonna be that person.
Yeah, and not just a challenger. Mandela Barnes is a very grassroots. He's knocking on doors. He's getting out there, and he's running the kind of campaign that you're seeing a lot of these really successful Democrats run. So, similar to Fetterman in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Right. Similar to some of these other candidates that we are seeing that are running really good. Get out, stump, talk to people, get your message across, and he is doing a really good job.
So Senator Ron Johnson is running for a third term. By the way, as I've mentioned before, Senator Ron Johnson is from Mankato, Minnesota, which is not far at all from where I grew up. So that is originally where Mr. Johnson's from. But he's running for a third term. But it's interesting as we see this race play out. There's a real sharp contrast here, right? And this is where Wisconsin voters have to decide what they want, right? Barnes is that progressive. Phill, you mentioned a minute ago, a grassroots guy who's out there knocking on doors, right? And likes the small donations that are coming in, right? Very grassrootsy, very progressive, right? He's outspoken on that. Vice, and again, here's where the Wisconsin voters have to decide. This person's going against a very staunch conservative in Johnson, who's very outspoken on his views.
Yeah, wants to get rid of Social Security, wants to get rid of Medicare, right?
So he's made some statements like that.
He's made that statement.
Well, I mean, that's what I'm saying. But he's made some other ones that some people have called him into question, on a variety of things. Johnson's certainly in the Trump camp, right? Very much on the Trump side of things, if you will. Some pre-primary surveys, though, actually they, figuring Barnes was going to win his primaries. A pre-primary survey was conducted by Marquette University there in Wisconsin. It shows Barnes up 46-44, so really tight race. Barnes has a slight lead amongst independents. Now that could be key in the race.
Yep.
I will say that. You've heard me, Phill, you and I have talked about this before. You probably heard me say it in the podcast even, right? Independents a lot of times can be who makes or breaks that race, right?
I actually was reading something the other day, too, that talked about how the independent block currently is like 2 to 3 times larger than it has been historically over the past, 3 decades.
Well, and some of that may just be people, quote unquote, frustrated with their parties, right? And so, but regardless, Barnes has a slight edge with them. So independents seem to be favoring him more than Johnson. A survey showed Johnson did not show as much strength amongst Republicans. They just weren't as energized about him as Democrats are with Barnes. Mm-hmm. And so I want to just say this, Phill, watch this race.
Yeah, no, I agree. Now, I will put in the caveat for Johnson. Johnson has surprised a lot of people before, right? I don't think everybody thought he was going to lose out and not get elected to a second term. He got it, so he's got more money in the coffers.
Oh, yeah. He's the incumbent.
Yeah, and I think it's something like he's got double the amount of money to spend that Barnes does going into this race. But I do think this is going to be an interesting one, and this is going to be another one that plays into, my predictions. I think I made those on the first episode or maybe the second one or third. I don't remember at this point, but hopefully I spouted my November primary predictions, and we can go back and revisit those after November and see how well I did.
Yeah, and this, like I said, this will be a tight race to see how it comes out. You are right, Phill. Johnson's been underwater before and just kind of shock the world, if you will.
Yeah,
I don't know,
like a tadpole or something that just
he just sort of comes back out there. So we'll see. But again, I think you and I both agree. Let's watch this race. Let's keep an eye on it. And I have a feeling, Phill, we're going to talk about it before November again, right? It's going to be a race we'll come back to. Also in Wisconsin, the Assembly Speaker Robin Vos narrowly beat the Trump challenger. He's been in the news because he was one that was outspoken, telling Trump, I'm not going to go back and look at the election results from 2 years ago.
Well, and I think Voss was the one too that said was going to try and get rid of contraception in the state, right? Like, I think that was a statement that was made publicly too.
It may have been.
It's just kind of weird. That actually could have been the other person. I don't quote me on that. I just read that in that specific race there was some pretty controversial statements made that I can just almost assume that most people in Wisconsin are not down with.
Well, as soon as he beat his Trump challenger, then he fired the investigator of the 2020 voting fraud up there in Wisconsin. So Voss, he's just like, hey, I'm done. Clearly he's done with it because he not only did he win, he fired that guy. So I want to touch on one more thing that has come up as far as races go, and this is going to lead us up into our midterms here. But Phill, Mehmet Oz this week, I want to look into Pennsylvania. You touched on it real quick with Fetterman when you brought him up earlier. Mehmet Oz has come out and challenged John Fetterman, and this is in the Pennsylvania Senate race. Again, they're running to replace retiring Republican Senator Pat Toomey. He has formally challenged him to 5 debates. And this is largely stemming from Fetterman having been out of the spotlight since a May 15th stroke, right, for medical reasons.
Yeah, but just as John Fetterman has done so expertly while he's been off the trail, as soon as he gets challenged, what does he do?
Yeah,
he effectively just trolls the shit out of Oz.
Sure. But again, so that has come out with Oz saying, "Hey, we haven't seen this guy. Apparently, he's just living in his basement, right?" And the GOP up there in Pennsylvania, they want to use it to push back on Fetterman's health, right? Hey, you know what? We think his health is an issue right now. We want him, put him on the stage. Let's see. Some are saying his speech is slurred. That was all this coming out, right? And so Oz is like, all right, you know what? I want to debate him. I will say this, though. Then on Friday night, Fetterman comes out and makes his first public appearance that he has since May when he had his stroke at a rally in Northwest Pennsylvania. Drew 1,400 people. Yeah. And I heard a little bit of him speak. It did not sound to me like he had slurred speech. Honestly, he looked like the classic John Fetterman. He's out there and he's got his hoodie on and some jeans. I mean, dressed the way you would expect him to be dressed. I mean, did he not look like the John Fetterman we know?
He looked great, sounded great. I think this is going to be another blunder that ends up going, and hurting the Republican candidate here. Because even while Mehmet Oz is trying to make this an issue, right, that his health is questionable and he may not be able to do the job, while that is all going on and we're not seeing Fetterman publicly, his poll numbers are still going up. I mean, we talked about it. Like, I think the lowest poll I saw was 8 points.
I saw
the
one
highest
at 11,
one was like 11. So, I mean, he's just killing it. I think that, whether Fetterman agrees to all 5 or agrees to 1 or 2. I don't know what 5 debates does. I mean, does anybody really do that many debates? It's kind of a ridiculous thing.
The presidents don't even do that.
The presidents don't. Yeah.
So I think Fetterman is a.
And keep in mind, this is also coming from a party that said we're not doing debates anymore, a year ago, right?
Well, okay, but then Fetterman wants to, Oz wants to debate. Now they want Herschel Walker to debate.
Herschel Walker needs to debate, apparently. So.
But I'll say this. Fetterman's got a lead there. I think he's grassrootsy, like we've talked about before. That's a tough challenger for Oz.
Okay, one more thing about primaries before we move on to the wrap-up, the parting shots, is watch Wyoming this week.
Yes.
So Tuesday there is going to be a primary election, and we are going to see the rubber meet the road with Liz Cheney.
And I will just make a prediction. Cheney will get primaried out. I think most people, she's way underwater in her polls. But, Phil, I want to say this. We will not hear the last of Liz Cheney. I think Liz Cheney has her eyes on a presidential run.
Apparently we didn't hear the last of Dick Cheney because he came out and spoke right last week. I heard one commentator say, all these string of good things are happening. Like, what's up, universe? Are you drunk? Like, but yeah,
I do. I think Liz Cheney's setting the table for a 2024 presidential run.
I agree, and I think that's also pretty positive for the way the country is going. But yeah, I agree with you. I think she's going to get primaried out. But it'll be one to watch, nevertheless.
Absolutely.
I'm going to keep an eye on it.
Yeah, I'm glad you pointed that out. I think we'll both be watching it. Like I said, so I think we've got a prediction there with how it's going to turn out, but worth watching nevertheless. One more plug for our website, Phil, before we end this thing.
Absolutely. Go to pocketpolitics.co. Keep in mind that's not .com, that's just .co, because we are not that savvy to get the top domain for our website. But go to pocketpolitics.co. We have links on there, bios, pictures, and then you can subscribe and link directly to Spotify through there. Also, you can find us everywhere where major podcasts are. Yep. Google, Spotify, Apple, right? And you can even go to our Anchor website and find us there. So
we're all over the place. Give us a listen, please.
And tell people about it. If you like it, tell your family, tell your friends.
Tell people that aren't your friends.
Just tell people.
Just
talk about it. And then finally, as we move into parting shots, I'm going to lead today because the meme world was off the charts this week. Obviously, with all the stuff coming out about the Mar-a-Lago raid, they did a great job. And now there's this emerging Dark Brandon meme. Have you seen that, Cam?
It's I have seen a little bit of it, yes.
The laser eyes.
Yeah.
It was followed up, even though, it was followed up a couple days later by the Dark Garland with Merrick Garland, But various memes. I thought they were pretty entertaining. I mean, there's all kinds of quotes and stuff people to put it together. I don't even know if these are like progressive left-leaning people that are doing this, but for some reason they adopted it, and then White House staffers were like putting that out on official White House accounts. So it's been somewhat adopted by the administration, to some extent. I just think it's hilarious. If you haven't seen them, you can Google Dark Brandon. They're pretty funny.
I think they're all over the place now.
Yeah, and I love it. So slightly weird, but it was hysterical. It made me laugh. And then I'll kick it over to you for your parting shot, Cam.
All right. Well, I don't have anything quite like those memes for you here today on my parting shot. I just want to say this though. We keep talking about races, etc. Here's a name I want to throw out at you today, and that is Larry Hogan, who's the Maryland governor right now. And I want to throw his name out there. Keep an eye on him for a possible 2024 presidential run. Okay, now, Larry Hogan he's a very moderate Republican in Maryland. We talked about him earlier, kind of in this episode here. But he just recently visited the Iowa State Fair, which is where a lot of these folks that are interested in making a run at the presidential races, they'll drop into that Iowa State Fair because they know that
the Iowa caucus is
exactly.
Like the
it's kind of it's that big kickoff one. So the Iowa State Fair is where a lot of them go to, right? And so he was there, and while he was there, he participated in a round table with some police. Where he really touted an anti-crime, pro-law enforcement ideas. But he also said this: I want law enforcement to work for everyone, and I want it to be fair. There are more and more people now that are speculating that he wants to get in there, and he's looking for maybe this moderate, kind of centrist lane, if you will, in the Republican Party, hoping that still exists, that he can use it to oppose Trump. Apparently he's visited some other states recently too, and I saw him this morning on one of the morning shows, and I can't remember which one it was, doesn't matter. Nevertheless, I saw an interview with him this morning, and he was asked if he's going to run for president, and he sort of in true political fashion dodged it. So it looks to me like Mr. Hogan is seriously looking at a 2024 run. So ladies and gentlemen, keep your eyes on Larry Hogan.
Okay, so he stands the chance to be one of the 11 or 12 GOP presidential candidates.
Him and Liz Cheney, and then
that's if she runs as a Republican. You never know how.
So funny. They asked Larry Hogan if he'd run as an independent, and again he kind of smiled and that's not really something that's ever interested me before. But he didn't say no.
Well, yeah, but I think the key to asking that question especially for a guy like Hogan is that the word "run" is still in there, so he's going to avoid the question.
Yeah,
when it says it's less about the independent word and more about the run word, Well, and that's the key there.
And you know what? As we talked about a couple of weeks ago, there is a new supposed third party coming out there, the whatever it was, the Forward Party. So maybe they'll draft Larry Hogan. I don't know.
I'm not going to hold my breath on that.
I'm not either. But ladies and gentlemen, keep your eye on it because I think Larry Hogan has some real interest in running for president. And you know what? Governor Hogan is someone I've liked a lot of things he's done. He certainly comes out there in that moderate field, tries to speak to both sides of the aisle. But with all that being said, Phil, looks like we are out of time, so I've had a lot of fun this week, as I always have, and I hope you have as well.
Absolutely. Cam, it was great talking with you again, and to our listeners out there, keep plugging away, keep listening, and keep telling people about it. I did have a friend say that he really enjoyed listening to it, to the point where him and his wife were going to listen to it like when they laid down to go to sleep, and then they couldn't get it up. They're like, okay, we just don't want his voice while we're trying to go to bed, So I thought that was pretty funny. But either way, keep listening, keep telling us about it, and go visit pocketpolitics.co.
All right. Till next time.
Bye.